So BFDIA 14 was really good actually. First off, the episode starts with the recommended characters, which is obviously a wonderful thing to see. I am so glad they didn't just give them screen time in BFDIA 13 and just not make them do anything for the rest of the season. Also, about time Pin gets her face back. It's been like 4 episodes, but I'll be honest, why does this whole facial recovery session feel like a cult meeting? Like, are you guys happy that Pin is coming back, or are you summoning a demon from the underworld? The whole Bugs being the host was never funny to me, and quite frankly I found it really tiring and exhausting. Like, how do we go from this to this to this to this? It just kinda seems so in your face with how random the hosts are getting. Thank you, Spongy. The Spongy slander shall no longer be tolerated. Barf Bag single-handedly has more relevance here, unlike the whole of Pot, which is honestly very sad. What's also sad is that Golf Ball gets eliminated. I have no idea what people have against her. She's been so good these past episodes. Why is she always in the bottom too? Her elimination did upset me, as she got out over Bommy, in which Bommy is someone I don't hate at all. But out of everyone left, he is the most bland and boring one, so I do think it is his time to go. But I also do feel like this is a very good thing for Tennis Ball specifically. For a long time he hasn't done anything without being dependent on Golf Ball. Which I didn't like. I might get hate for this, but he doesn't really feel like his own person. He has done more on his own in the past few episodes, but still it's all related to Golf Ball. So this is a good opportunity for Tennis Ball to be his own person without being attached to Golf Ball finally. This is another thing I love about this episode, as it shows us how good Tennis Ball can be without Golf Ball. He works with Nickel through the rest of the challenge. This also shows us how TB can do things himself without the involvement of GB. Which is also good for Nickel's case as well, because in BFDIA at least he doesn't really stick out much. But I really enjoyed how these two interact through the rest of the episode. It's a nice breath of fresh air. In fact, they have had funny moments. And I'm excited where the writers take them, due to the fact Nickel had nothing to do. Speaking of Nickel, I really enjoyed him this episode, because one of the many things that I did not like about BFDIA 12 is that Nickel literally dies the second the challenge begins. And in previous episodes we don't really see him interacting much at all with his teammates alone without the team setting. Except maybe for Bommy. He just genuinely is a lot more funnier to me in this episode compared to the last few. He seems to have more of a personality here, because in older episodes has kind of just bland. It feels like the writers didn't know what to do with him back then. Another thing I like about this episode is that I really like the concept of the eliminated contestants hosting. I know I had some sort of a mini rant on the Bugs a little bit prior, but I'll admit it's really nice to see the LOL contestants play a big role in this episode, just like last time. Plus, this is probably the closest thing we'll ever see to Donut hosting again, so I really cannot be upset about this. This entire challenge has also been really creative. In this challenge the teams are split up and everyone competes into pairs, as I briefly mentioned earlier. I love how these pairs are made. Free Smart is obviously paired up together, and Nickel, TB, Fries and Bommy have really funny team dynamics. The challenge is to get to a bunk bed located above 5 separate floating islands, each island having a separate theme, such as the first one being based on the islands the contestants ordered last episode. All the different islands have something unique for each of them. For instance, the contestants having to collect the cherry filling as fuel from the Donut Island take them to Dora's Island, in which they have to eat chunks of the island to go past. Also, I know I mentioned this earlier, but Donut really makes for a fitting host, even though he only hosts for one section of the challenge. It's still nice to see him host again, even though it's very short. It just makes me wish we see Donut host or do something very significant. It almost feels like they want to do something with him in every season except the one he is currently in. Even the contestants mentioned how good it is he's hosting again. You cannot call me crazy. Also, I like how these are the islands the eliminated contestants ordered last episode. It really gives a sense of continuity. Another thing I really like is that this episode really puts heavy focus on Needle, on which we have seen before, but it feels like they are really giving her the spotlight, which I love, because for the whole of BFB and like the majority of Pot, the writers for some reason just don't really like doing things with her, so it's refreshing to know Needle gets a big role yet again. I really like her dynamic with Free Smart. If I'm gonna be honest, she kinda works just as well as Match does with Free Smart. Later on we see Dora host, and it is kinda crazy that she has more lines in this episode than the whole of BFDIA. She was really funny and actually made me laugh a couple times. Till this day I cannot even fathom how she has never survived an elimination. Also, what could she be possibly saying for the writers to not subtitle that line of dialogue? Also, why are we having a whole dental procedure? I literally have a dentist appointment like 2 days after this video. Is this a sign? Later on we see Teardrops Island, and I really like how different this one feels. Instead of collecting something and using them, the contestants instead have to help one of the other drops on the island with keeping peace and quiet. Also, finally, Bubble is back. I sure hope she doesn't get killed off again by the end of the episode. Oh. One thing I like about Bubble is that they really kept her goofy BFDIA personality. Which is something I've been missing for a long time, because I'll be honest, in BFB at least her goofiness is somewhat gone. In fact, in the last episode she competes and they just make her some side character. So I am really glad we also get to see the whole alliance get back together before BFB. Another person that does return is Evil Leafy, which is nice as she brings a lot of chaos. This has pleased me and the 5 other Evil Leafy fans. This episode also really focuses on Needle's interaction with FreeSmart, adding on and connecting towards episode 12. FreeSmart might have been the best thing to happen to Needle, as we really see her improve and get more screen time as the episodes go by. Which is something she lacked in pretty much all of BFB and 2/3 of Pod. This episode in particular shows her as a very strong character, carrying Pencil up until the second island all on her own with no help whatsoever. I love how these later episodes completely remove the Needy gag and instead focuses on Needle as a character, as in season 1 she was just a gag. The Needy jokes do come back, but they aren't used nearly as much as before. Plus she has an insanely good singing voice at the end. This episode has successfully made Needle one of my fave contestants. Another character I really enjoyed is Fries. In this episode I enjoyed his banter with Bommy and Puffball. Specifically Puffball at the end, as it is very ironic due to the fact that these two end up being best friends like 3 seasons later. Which is honestly funny to think about, as I never really thought Fries was that bothered by Puffball's sabotage in BFDIA 5E as much as characters as Golf Ball, as even in TPOT Golf Ball doesn't trust her. It does make sense, but I thought that he'd be way less bothered. I really like this, as this could introduce something we have yet to see after BFDIA ends. Another thing I really like about this episode is Match's and Pencil's interaction to Link with IDFB, as we see that Pencil isn't too fond of Match. She literally ignores her, which is honestly kinda sad. As Match has been yapping non-stop for the whole of the time she's on screen about Pencil last episode. Can't wait to see more of this, as Pencil clearly dislikes Match and IDFB as well. So most likely they would continue this minor storyline. This just makes me even more upset that Pencil gets derailed bad in BFB in just 1 episode only. And of course I have to speak about it. The pin revenge scene on FreeSmart was extremely satisfying to watch and insanely well animated. I think this might be one of the most well animated scenes in the entire show, in fact. Especially as she goes off book and Ruby at the very end. Again, it was insanely satisfying to watch. This is one of the reasons I love BFDIA pin so much. There isn't anything bad I can really say about this episode. One minor criticism is that it would be nice to see Teardrop attempt to explain the challenge through signs and body language instead of Bommy just seeking for her. But that is not a big deal. This episode has really exceeded my expectations, improving my thoughts on BFDIA. As I didn't like episode 12 much at all. The team has done a very great job with this episode. Overall, on the Jello scale, I rated a 9 out of 10 episode. Is really good and has exceeded my expectations, a significant improvement over BFDIA 12.